There is someone in your life who remembers the name of your childhood dog, shows up exactly when you need them, and will never, not once, let you see inside. You have met this person. You might be this person. They are magnetic in a quiet way. They pick up on details nobody else catches. They make people feel genuinely understood in the span of a single conversation. They adopt to every room they enter. They are generous with their attention. And yet, if you ever tried to move past a certain point with them, you would feel it. Not a rejection exactly, more like a ceiling. Warmth without entry, connection without depth. We get the psychology of distrust completely wrong. The image most people carry is the bitter cynic, the suspicious loner scanning every room for hidden motives. That character exists, but it is not the common face of chronic distrust. The more typical version looks like someone who is genuinely excellent at being present for other people, someone who gives freely, listens closely, and makes you feel real, while running a quiet, continuous operation underneath to make sure you never get close enough to matter too much. That kind of behavior is not a personality quirk, it is a structure, and it was built deliberately over a long time. Here's something most people misunderstand. The capacity to trust is not a trait you are born with or without, like eye color or a sharp chin. Trust is a verdict. It is what the nervous system concludes after processing enough evidence, and most of that evidence was gathered before you had any say in the matter. John Bowlby, the psychologist behind attachment theory, spent his career showing how the very first bonds a child forms become a kind of internal blueprint, a working model for all relationships that follow. The central question the developing brain is trying to answer is something like, when I need someone, will they actually be there? And that question gets answered early, very early. Once the system has an answer it is confident in, it does not go looking for counterarguments. So consider what happens when a child grows up in an environment where safety was unpredictable, where love was present sometimes and absent other times, and you could never quite figure out the pattern, where the person you ran toward when frightened was sometimes the same person generating the fear. In that situation, the brain does not arrive at a narrow conclusion about those specific individuals. It draws a much wider one. People, as a category, cannot be relied upon. And that conclusion travels forward in time into every new connection, every moment of potential closeness, every situation where someone gets just familiar enough that the old signal starts firing again. What does it actually feel like to live inside that? What I want you to genuinely sit with is this. It is a permanent, exhausting negotiation between longing and caution, because people who do not trust anyone almost universally want connection. The desire does not disappear. The need for closeness does not dissolve. What contracts is the confidence that allowing someone in is something you can survive. You meet someone, and for a brief moment, something real flickers. Hope, maybe. And anyone who has lived this will recognize the sensation precisely, your own mind starts auditing the situation. Something in you begins searching for the inconsistency, the crack in the surface, the moment their behavior shifts slightly from what they showed you at the beginning. The cruelest part of this is that the search itself creates distance. The person across from you reads your guardedness as indifference. They conclude you are not interested. They pull back. And from the inside, that withdrawal felt like confirmation of exactly what you feared. Psychologist Jennifer Freyd introduced the concept of betrayal trauma to describe what occurs when the person who harms you is also someone your survival depends on, a caregiver, a partner, someone structurally necessary. The remarkable and disturbing thing the mind does in that scenario is suppress its own awareness of what happened, not as a choice, but as a function. Because a child cannot survive the severing of attachment to a parent, the brain learns to not fully register the thing it knows. Do that long enough, and something strange starts to happen. The distrust does not only point outward at other people, it starts pointing inward. You begin doubting your own reading of situations. Am I overreacting? Did I invent that? Maybe I'm the problem here. People who were repeatedly told that their perceptions were wrong, that they were dramatic, too sensitive, imagining things, often grow into adults who are simultaneously hyper-aware of their environment and profoundly uncertain about whether what they perceive is real. They read the room with almost uncomfortable precision,
and then immediately begin questioning the reading. That is not a personality failure. It is what happens to a compass that was deliberately spun. The behavioral patterns that develop from all of this diverge in interesting directions. Some people become avoidant. They keep relationships deliberately light, and they have a strange tendency to manufacture conflict or distance exactly when closeness is reaching its peak. Others develop anxious patterns, constant proximity seeking, continuous monitoring, testing, the inability to ever fully settle even when everything seems fine. And then there are people who move between both extremes, pulling someone close and then panicking, pushing them away, and then feeling completely hollowed out when that person actually leaves. From the outside, this can look calculated, even manipulative. From the inside, it feels like going underwater. What I think deserves more attention is what happens when someone like this decides to trust you. Because when a person who has every neurological reason to protect themselves chooses to let you past the perimeter, that choice is not casual. Choosing to trust when every instinct says protect yourself is one of the quieter forms of courage. They don't do it halfway, they do it completely. Which is also why the fracture, if it comes, lands so hard. It was never only about this particular relationship. It was the entire argument they made to themselves, that this time the math would come out differently. Rebuilding genuine trust, not a performance of trust, but actual trust, is slow, slower than the person building it wants. It doesn't happen because someone makes a compelling promise. Promises register as almost meaningless to a nervous system calibrated around anticipated betrayal. What shifts gradually is something researchers in attachment science call earned security, the slow accumulation of repeated, consistent, low-drama experiences that begin to revise the brain's existing model. The key word is revise, not replace, not erase, revise. What that looks like in real life is not a grand demonstration. It is someone behaving the same way on a forgettable Thursday as they did when they were still trying to make a good impression. It is the quiet pileup of small, unremarkable moments of reliability, moments that the nervous system slowly, reluctantly, begins to file in a different category, not as proof that this specific person is safe, but as a tentative revision to the broader model. The nervous system does not stop waiting for things to collapse all at once. It just stops waiting quite as hard. The people who rebuilt trust didn't do it in one brave moment, they did it in 1,000 ordinary ones. And the process is not clean. There are stretches of real openness followed by abrupt withdrawal that can look from the outside like pure regression. When that happens, it is not weakness. It is old architecture stress testing itself under new conditions, figuring out how much weight it can bear before making any permanent decisions about structure. If you're watching this and recognizing yourself, not in the comfortable, abstract way of finding something intellectually interesting, but in the specific, slightly warm and slightly uncomfortable way of being genuinely seen, then I want to say something directly to you. The way you love underneath all the layers of protection is not a diminished version of love. It is full. The capacity you carry for connection, given everything in your history that argued against it, is not ordinary. You constructed something remarkable in order to make it through. You did make it through. The next part of the work, the slower and in some ways stranger part, is deciding which of those structures you actually still need. If this conversation reached something in you, the best thing you can do is share it with someone it might reach too. Hit the like button, and if you want more content like this, Noetics is where we go deep on psychology, human behavior, and the mechanics of thought. Subscribe and turn notifications on so you don't miss what comes next.